The topic of today's video is pretty straightforward in its technical aspect, however it does require a bit of a disclaimer. This video is about doing a traction control off mod for the 4th generation Toyota 4Runner. There's basically two ways to do this if your vehicle didn't come with a traction control off switch from the factory. I prefer this way, basically because it's better for winter driving in my opinion. One of the ways to modify the traction control on your Toyota 4Runner is to disable it by disabling the ABS. This works well. It disables every traction control system. However, you have to cycle the key in order to get your traction control systems back online. For me, with winter driving, I don't like that option because if I disable traction control, I don't know that I'm not going to want it back active just a few moments later as I'm going down the road. This modification allows you to turn on and off the traction control at will without having to cycle the key while moving or while stopped. This modification works by tricking the vehicle's computer into thinking the center differential has been locked. Now if that's all it does, you might be wondering why I don't just lock the center differential. Personally, I don't think that is realistic when you're driving on the road in winter conditions for a couple of reasons. The first is it's kind of slow to do. The center diff on these trucks doesn't always engage quickly, and for a lot of people out there it doesn't engage at all. Now on my 4Runner it engages reliably and fairly quickly, but for winter driving emergencies I don't consider it fast enough. If I find myself stuck in a snowbank with half of my vehicle exposed to a major road, I want to be able to get out of that situation as quickly as possible. And traction control may be making it so that I cannot get out of that situation, so I need to disable traction control as quickly as possible. In addition, where I live in particular, I often have to pull through a deep snowbank to get onto a main road, and then that main road is usually pretty dry. So once I'm through that snowbank and turning a hard right onto that road, I don't want to have the center diff lock because I don't want it binding up. I should also mention that this modification has been done to a 2003 V8 four-wheel drive Toyota 4Runner. This modification, as I've already stated, will only work on a four-wheel drive model because of the way it tricks the computer. However, I do not know if this will work on other model years or V6 trucks. I also don't know that it won't work. So you can double check for yourself. I've provided links down below for the resources I used when I decided to do this modification, and you can decide for yourself whether it's something that you want to do. Now to do this modification, all you're going to need is a large Phillips screwdriver or a 10mm wrench, and some very basic wiring tools. Before I get into which wire you're going to modify, I'm going to show you how I routed the wiring. As you can see, I have my switch mounted right here. It's very easy to reach from the driver's seat, and in addition, it's mounted to a removable panel, so if I ever want to do this modification differently, or get rid of it for any reason, I can replace that one panel, and my dash won't have any holes left in it. In addition, it's very near to this bolt here, which I used as a grounding point. To run the wiring for this modification, you're going to run a wire from the passenger side that we were looking at earlier to this switch, and then from the other end of the switch you'll run a wire to a ground. That is all that there is involved in the wiring for this modification. It's extremely straightforward and very simple. Now we're going to go back to the other side and I'll show you which wire you need to tap into in order to run over to this switch. The one bolt that you have to undo in order to access the wire that we're going to be tapping into is located right here underneath the glove box. I'm going to use my 10mm wrench and remove it. And now it's just a series of plastic snaps. Don't worry about breaking anything. These Toyota interiors are really well made, and I've found that they come apart and go together dozens of times really easily. Go ahead and pull down, and it's free. As we can see, this is the four-wheel drive control computer, and there's two plugs going into it. Of these two plugs, the one which we are interested in is the one that's located closer to the front of the vehicle. To make it easier to work on, we're just going to go ahead and unplug this. This has a tab on the top right here that you press in and pull out. Stock, this will just be held together by being stuck to itself, but I've had to put on some zip ties because the sticky material doesn't reuse very well. If you open up this loom, you'll find several wires. Mine has 9, and the one you're interested in is a magenta color with a thin blue stripe. Mine also has silver specks on it. You do not want the blue wire with a magenta stripe. You want the magenta wire with a blue stripe. All you're going to do is take your wire, which is installed on one end of the switch on the driver's side, run it over to this harness, and tap it into that magenta wire with a blue stripe. Make sure to seal your connection and ensure that it's strong so it won't vibrate loose or crack from off-road use. Once you've tapped into the wire, you just need to close this loom back up to protect the wires. Like I used a couple of zip ties, you could use some electrical tape, whatever works best for you. And then you just need to plug that right back into your four-wheel drive ECU, line up the plastic tabs, and reinstall this underneath your dash. It can be a little bit finicky sometimes, but it fits in pretty straightforward. Then you just need to take your screw and your tool, install, and that's all there is to it. This is a fairly straightforward modification that can be completed in just a few minutes if you're familiar with the interior of your 4Runner. Unfortunately, I'm currently having problems with some part of my traction control or ABS system on my 4Runner, so my traction control system is disabled, so I won't be able to show a comparison of what the vehicle drives like with and without traction control. I've already done a video of that before though, so I'll link that in the description as well. Hopefully this video was useful, and please comment down below if you have any questions or future video suggestions.